Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Not Safe for Wonks. I'm Kennedy Cooper with you as always.
Leia
Who else we got
Rose.
here?
Brandon Buchanan.
Leia
And
Rose.
we have a guest today.
Do.
Hello.
Hello, it's Sarah Marilyn. Sarah Marilyn is a social media strategist on the interwebs, and she's worked for political campaigns, including the Marianne Williamson campaign. And we've been so excited to
Remember
record
that, guys? Remember the Marianne campaign? We haven't
No,
talked
I
about that in
don't,
like 40
actually.
episodes.
Okay. Power level, fully there.
Right.
We've obviously been very big fans of Sarah since the week that we started the podcast. And we had Sarah as one of our like dream targets for the show, just to talk about social media and meme power and generating campaigns online.
All the fun
And now,
stuff.
and now we actually have her here. So welcome, show.
Thank you. I've been dying to sit with you guys. This is great.
Yeah, and we're
Yeah.
happy to have you as well.
So Sarah, could you just briefly introduce yourself, kind of like say who you are and your history with being a professional memer?
Awesome. Yeah, I used to be a brain scientist. A lot of people might not know that about me. I used to work on brain-computer interfaces and specifically for ALS patients. And a study I was working on basically went dead in the water because funding ran out. And then a few months later, the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge happened. And that was like completely derailed my career. I was like, oh my gosh, the hashtag raised millions of dollars where before these private institutions couldn't even fund the study. And so that was like how I got started on this and just went full force into social media and activism, raising awareness and money for causes. So that's how it all started.
That's actually that's an incredible origin story.
Yeah.
I guess it was like written in the fates or something. I'm like, oh yes. People are like, used to be a brain scientist. I'm like, yeah, trust me, social media is, it's as fun, but there's so much potential there. And I actually had no intentions of getting into politics at first. I worked for startups and companies just like setting up their social media infrastructure. And it was like I was getting started at a time where big brands were just starting to figure out like, oh, we need a serious social media presence and we need to like respond to comments on our pages and things like that. And they were like sort of just figuring this out. This was like eight years ago almost. And so I would just like go in and help people set up like, okay, you need an Instagram, you need a Facebook, this is how you should do it, train staff, stuff like that. And I've always been a political activist online and memeing for fun. I like manage all these meme pages. And so it's sort of just always been a thing. But this election cycle, for some reason, just everything took off. And I just went full force, maybe because after what happened in 2016, I was like, I hear the call this time. And, I guess started memeing professionally at that point, that the memes became the main deal rather than just what I did on the side for fun.
What issues grabbed you the most in terms of your political priority going into this election? You obviously got to survive, as all of us have survived, 3.5 years of Donald Trump. Somehow. So was there something in that cycle that really grabbed you, or was it something beforehand, or what kind of propelled you to be in 2020?
Well, one of the main issues I've literally been posting about prison reform on my Facebook for like 10 years. So, I become new friends with people and they get like, offended when I post some stuff. And I'm like, look, I've been doing this for literally a decade. Like, I'm going to keep saying it. So prison reform was like, or prison abolition, was one of the main issues. And I never expected that it would be taken seriously on a national stage. And I don't know if they're seriously talking about like marijuana reform and things like that, which is obviously important. Right. But I think it was the sort of whatever had to grab us had to be sort of larger than life, I think, because that's what Trump was. And I wasn't expecting anything inspiring. It really just snuck up on me. It all happened when the first Democratic debate happened and the first Marianne Williamson memes happened. And I was like, oh, at first I was like, oh, this is the greatest thing ever. Like, it's hilarious. and then I was like, I started the meme group and it just blew up. And I was like, oh, this is actually for real. Like, we are literally building an army of love right now. Like, are we really doing this, harnessing love for political purposes? And then we just were harnessing memes for political purposes within a weekend.
Yeah, that was
literally
insane.
our story. We literally started, I think, the same weekend that you started your meme page.
You guys were part of it. Yes, exactly. You're part of this whole like explosion. So
we've told this story before, but I think we were all drawn to Marianne, and we got to this Marianne Discord server, and one of us threw around the idea of making a podcast, and then another one of us at some few days later was like pinged us and was like, hey, do you want to actually make a podcast? And then one thing turned into another, and now we're 50 episodes in, and we're making.
So did you guys know each other? Did you guys know each other before this started?
Not at all. Not at all.
Our chemistry
Isn't that the most fascinating thing?
Complete accident. I'm in Georgia. Kennedy is in New Mexico. Leia at the time was in Washington.
I was just until ago in Washington.
Right. And she's in Texas now. But yes, our amazing chemistry is a complete accident.
We stumbled into this literally. Like this very well could have made 1 or 2 episodes. The chemistry isn't really there, dies out. But like made this happen. And it all happened because of Marianne.
It's all because of those memes.
Yeah.
It's a bigger thing that's happening. I mean, with the whole orb gang and everything, it was like that as well. None of us knew each other. And all of a sudden there's like, it was almost like a cell infrastructure, like just people from all over meeting in some way and creating things. Like we made a website and all this stuff, and we had never met, never even talked to each other before this meme thing. And I think we're really entering a time when we're seeing what is really possible. That like before July, I don't think I ever would have imagined that I would spontaneously connect with like dozens of activists across the country and be actually doing things and like continuously doing things. Like it's a job.
Your friend Lau has actually been a repeated guest on our show.
Oh my God, I love Lau.
Yeah.
We're friends with Lau. That's Lau's.
Yeah, Lau's been deep in the orb since it started. Like building the orb gang site and everything like that. He's been there from the beginning.
To what degree do you think candidates should or should not embrace the meme culture that's built around themselves? I think there's kind of a spectrum from candidates who really embrace it. Swalwell obviously wasn't running anymore, but his Fartgate thing kind of blew up and he leaned into it. Donald Trump definitely leans into his own meme culture. There are people
he's been like, I don't know if you guys have been on the Lovecraftian Hell Twitter page, but he started to retweet like dumbass boomer of him.
Yeah.
It's happening. Conventional politics is starting to turn because they recognize its use.
That's an amazing question, because I feel like boomers aren't ready to ask that question or really hear the answer unprompted. And I'm so glad you mentioned Swalwell too, because his meme power grows by the week, and it's just absolutely fascinating to me. But I have always thought this election cycle so far has definitely, borne it out. I really think candidates of today and the future are going to have to lean into the meme. Like, you don't have to like throw all your weight behind it. I mean, obviously, there's rumors that the Feel the Burn was not an official Bernie meme or anything like that. It wasn't like campaign approved, but it ended up being like the biggest thing for him in 2015, just Feel the Burn. And they ended up running with it. And they definitely leaned into the meme, even though they might not have generated it themselves. And Trump is a great example of leaning into the meme. He goes a little hard sometimes, like the whole picture of him photoshopped with Rocky. That's a little more than leaning into the meme. But Swalwell and Fartgate is a perfect example, because that moment could have slipped by. And that's sort of the essence of building a lot of traction, whether you're a candidate or an activist, is really being of the moment. And when you're on social media, and social media is like where you're doing your work, the moment can easily just slip by. I mean, Fartgate was 4 or 5 hours long? Like it was literally like 9 p.m. and then by like 1 a.m. it was sort of fading. Yes. And the next day nobody was really talking about it. It was so fascinating.
That's just the way of how general social media trends happen. It's just like, it's like that.
If you remember that thing with the 30 to 50 feral hogs, and it became the number one meme on the internet for like one day.
For about 1 day.
For literally one day. And then the day after, it was like you're still joking about, you're still joking about feral hogs. That was yesterday.
Oh my God. And then the spontaneous revival of the cats and salami meme also has just been like, didn't that die like forever ago?
And there's a tendency to there's a tendency for people who don't have their ear to the ground on to read into meme culture really, really late. Like SNL, one of the SNLs whenever have made a are you in the right headspace of information that could possibly hurt you joke about Donald Trump, and it's like that's a sold now. You can't be doing.
See, that had to make
It's
its
so
way up the
true.
writer's room because the person that made the decision, it had to sink in for them to get it. So you can't do it right away. It has to like climb the ladder.
I mean, that's the whole format of television. Like even something as quickly put together as SNL, it can't adapt to the culture.
Well, let's quickly talk about that. A lot of a political campaign or an activist campaign is based on conversations or is based on phone calls or is based on other slower forms of communication. How do you determine what popular things are things that should be jumped on in terms of your messaging and your broadcasting, and which should be kind of held back on? One of the observations I've had that it's really a group of people can come up with something that's better than 2 or 3 people. The internet as a whole, the mass brain power on filtering and seeing something get or lose traction in real time, it's just smarter than all of us put together, than any single person possibly can be, no matter how talented they are. So yeah, how do you determine which thing, Sean, or be inspired by?
I think there should be a general rule of trying it. I mean, faking it and trying too hard is sort of where you can go wrong. Like that time when someone on the Kamala campaign took the picture and substituted her for Nancy Pelosi or Trump or something like that. And it was just they thought it was a good idea at the time, but it was you're trying too hard, and it ended up being a total disaster, and they deleted the post. So I think, where you're coming from is sort of crucial. But I think in general, it's better to just have contributed to the conversation in some way, whether it's, it doesn't have to be profound or the best tweet or meme ever. Because if you mess up, the social memory is so short, and if you keep seizing moments, what you did 2 weeks ago is not going to be what people think about if you're still doing stuff today. So in my opinion, it's better to just give it a go. If you're coming at it from the right place, it's better to just jump in there and do it as much as you can. Because the more you do it, the less impact the times you mess up happen. I mean, everyone messes up on social media. Even Eric Swalwell, messes up, but his meme power just grows constantly, and it's wild. So I think, and Trump, what I tell clients and candidates and stuff like that is exactly 0 of Trump's bad tweets prevented him from getting elected.
True. And that was on the big possible testing ground. It was
yeah.
And
United Airlines still sells tickets.
And people still, what I hate had that happen is whenever Trump makes a typo, immediately in the trending tab is Trump misspelled tower. He's gonna be impeached now. What a fucking idiot! What a dipshit. People act like it matters, but you just know that he's gonna eating bad, shitty tweets. He's gonna keep making typos. If he only tweeted a few times, then that failure would be noticed. But it's just it's constant.
Exactly. And we're really into a new era of media where people get their news on Twitter before they actually tune into physical cable news channels anymore. And things are not as polished anymore. It's sort of we knew this was happening in the 90s when we started transitioning to a soundbite culture where little things you said could just get taken out of context or whatever. And it's that was our first indication that we've departed from this sort of polished, scripted interview on CNN type of media or politics. Now we expect it to be unpolished. And when we see candidates who have totally, polished, sanitized posts, or brands that have totally polished, sanitized posts, they don't stick in our memory. You look at the Wendy's or Netflix Twitter, and it's freaking hilarious, and people love following them and engaging. So we're really just in a different age where you don't have to be perfect, and you're not expected to be perfect. And I think Trump is a perfect example of that.
Being slightly cringe is almost good right now.
Yeah.
God, that's so true. That's so true. You can't be afraid of your cringe.
Subscribers can have a little.
I mean, something I do say a lot when in regards to memes and social media and the era of media that we're in now is that it's worth it to just make lots of big bets. And that's kind of what meme culture is in a lot of ways. It's just betting on a concept kind of taking off within the cultural consciousness.
Every tweet is that.
Yeah. So like,
Yeah.
you know, if you make just like a couple of like big bets and that's all you lean into, then like whatever. But if you make lots and lots of big bets, then if even one of them comes true, people won't remember all the ones that didn't. They'll just be like, "Oh, you were so right. You were so right."
That you are so right. I mean, there's two things I would say about that. The first is if you study the 2016 election, or excuse me, the 2012 election, where you compare Obama against his opponent on social media, it is insane how much more frequently Obama posted on social media than his opponent. And like the statistics are directly coordinated. I mean, obviously we saw this again in 2016 because Trump just straight up more content, more tweets, more everything than anybody else he was up against. And that was true in 2008 and it was true in 2012 as well. And it's going to be true today. And the thought leader that I always sort of key into about this is Gary Vee. I don't know if any of you guys follow him or not, but he has like motivational posts. I love that stuff. But he's all about like more content. Like if you're not videotaping things because you didn't put on makeup and you're afraid that you don't look good, like you're not going to get ahead on social media. Like it's not about polished content. It's just about putting it out there. And I think that that's obviously true in the political realm as well. It's not just like a happy phrase that he says.
People are going to be suspicious of any 100% polished, 100% clean shaven, clean cut. I think that's part of the reason why Judge is getting dragged by a lot of the left is because of his super pristine image that never break. That smile never breaks.
For us as a show, definitely just release it has been our guiding philosophy. We have like a few episodes early in the run of our show that are practically unlistenable, but there's just so much momentum behind just repeatedly taking swings at it, and I don't think we've ever missed a release. We might have had a few that were late by a day or two, but released a couple episodes weekly all this time, except for we had a real disaster with our UAW live stream marathon. That's a whole different topic. Back on the subject of 2020 and meme. All memes are not funny. This is just my opinion. Nobody else has to share it with me. But I think the most successful meme in the most clinical term of an idea that stays in people's minds is Beto O'Rourke after the shooting in El Paso. I think that his discussions with the press in the wake of that incident weighed on people's minds so heavily that as a candidate, no one really took him seriously, but a percentage of people for like 2 or 3 weeks, they empathized with him on such a deep level that they saw his response to that as something that was presidential or thought that he should, be a leader. Can you just talk a little bit about how memes are not all humorous and memes are narrative, and how do we take this idea that everybody accepts the idea of narratives in a campaign, but it doesn't always stick in the terms of narratives can be smaller things. They can be moments and not stories that are told over a long period of time.
Yeah, I think that there's something factual about that actually. And then I kind of want to turn that Beto thing into a thought experiment, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Please do.
There's like there's what I think about is a beloved factor about memes, and whether it's like a joking meme like the hurricane thing with Marianne or something more serious like the Beto thing. The way that memes interact with however our brain processes that information, the topic of the meme comes out with a beloved factor, regardless, like whatever mood it is, the subject becomes more beloved to the people who see it and empathize with it. So I think that that's part of the power of the memes, and why people need to sort of lean into the meme when they can, is because it increases that beloved factor and people just want to hear from you again. But let's turn that into a thought experiment. And you said a small percentage of people really empathized with him after that, and they saw something in that. What if Beto had really leaned into that? And what if it was how Trump just pumps out these tweets in these moments? What if Beto had kept pumping out moments like that, like every couple days? Do you think his campaign would have like gone on a radically different course?
I can tell you for sure that our podcast, like during when he was still in the running, was like leaned completely into the idea that Beto should say fuck on the debate stage.
Oh yeah, we kept wanting that to happen. Like we had a whole candidate where after the whole "I wrote the damn bill" thing. And Beto should have said "fuck." Would have stored his polling. Been a moment. It would have been a thing.
I agree.
I think a larger issue with Beto's candidacy was authenticity. And I think when he was running for Senate in Texas, he was hitting counties, he was hitting the road, he was interfacing with people direct. Once you run for president, and I mean, Sarah, you can attest to this. Don't attest to it, but you can attest to it silently. There's a lot of human interference. There's a lot of consultants between you and any action that you take. And once there's that layer of optimization between you and authenticity, it's hard for you to connect with people in that same visceral way. That's why a lot of candidates, once they stop running for office, suddenly become more relatable because they don't have that layer between them and their audience. I mean, Beto is taking pictures with his dog, just chilling out, and took the internet by storm. Why didn't he do that while he was running? Like, if that was what
he's running all over Texas, hanging out with these state house people that are super cool and like looking just like a rock star again, basically, you know, like
and I think candidates, and really I think the game is changing so much, and I think we're probably going to see a lot of this in 2020, that you know, people who don't adapt and get on the certain level are just not going to be able to make it against the people who do. And it's partly like letting those consultants get in the way of the candidate and social media. And you know, a lot of campaigns function without the candidate ever touching their social media, and they leave it entirely up to the team. And that's just not going to work unless, you know, the people who are handling your account have the kind of authority to project that kind of authenticity without all those different layers that they have to go through. And then the other factor is candidates are just afraid. They're afraid that they'll tweet something and the media will spin it into whatever they want, which, you know, you can see with a lot of these candidates, and it makes them censor themselves. And that's something that I think we see even at an activist level, especially on Left Book. Like, you say one thing and you get canceled. And the people who continue to persevere throughout being canceled, like if you haven't been canceled 10 times, like, are you really an internet activist on the left? And you just keep going. But imagine if you had let the first time you got canceled stop you from making the posts or, you know, shit posting or posting your memes. You wouldn't have been getting as much work done. And candidates have to get on that level.
There's an old Union song called "You Ain't Done Nothing If You Ain't Been Called a Red." And I think we got to change "You Ain't Done Nothing If You Ain't Been Canceled."
Oh my God. That is timeless wisdom. Oh, thank you for that, Jem.
Think of all of the, we were talking about Brett Stevens earlier. And here's Here's a guy that said horrendous things over and over again, but it's just his job. And so he's just on this treadmill, and there's no consequence that can really reach him because he's just consistent. He's not going away. And despite it being a lesson from one of the worst people, it is a lesson that we can all take to heart and adapt.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about like people who haven't been canceled for the first time yet, and they've got a cause that they're passionate about and they want to get started, and they see that they have 0 tweets, 0 followers, 0 subscribers. It's kind of intimidating, and I think it's why most people don't get started, you know, championing themselves or championing their causes. What are the things that a person who's getting started on Twitter or Facebook or anything should be doing and thinking about to go from 0 to 100 or to just get off the ground?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it's the same for activists as it is for brands or companies and stuff like that. And it's always the thing that people don't want to hear. But I'm sorry, I've been around with the bots and the automation and the paying for likes and all the different ways to grow an audience. And, you know, you can do refined content strategies that play off of each platform's algorithm, and that's a whole art in itself. But the ultimate thing is social media is social. And there's no substitute for being social on social media. And Twitter is a great example because it's actually really easy to get a Twitter following if you want to just be on the platform responding to tweets, you know, blue checks, engage in those conversations, engage in those comment feeds. If you leave like a snarky or an amusing comment, you're going to get followers. And it's not just about like tweeting out into the ether or posting out into the ether. You have to be social. And you have to engage in conversations. And I think activists have a sort of edge over brands because brands always think of being so sanitized. And they're like, oh gosh, you know, Netflix just tweeted this tweet and, you know, these other brands are jumping in with these obscene responses. Do we really want to risk that? And they always think about those things. But activists, there's no there's no reason why you can't go onto Ben Shapiro's, Twitter and start engaging in the comment feeds or anything, except for the fact that you might not think it's a good use of your time. But I mean, that's social media is social. That's what you're supposed to do.
Have you ever been tempted?
In essence, what your advice? Go to Ben Shapiro's replies and call him.
Well, I would never recommend against that, but the snarkier or more, we would kind of return to authenticity, whatever that word means.
Right, of course.
I mean, a well-placed "you're short" is obviously going to get you some and likes, but anything well-placed in the comment feed will really. But yeah, literally any account that has followers, just engage in those conversations. Wherever there's people, engage in a conversation, and that's how you can get an audience, but also spread your message. Even if you only get 5 followers from that comment, or 2 followers or 1 follower, you can get 5 retweets, and who the heck cares? You're doing your work and it builds.
Absolutely. I personally enjoy dunking on Nate Silver anytime he tweets.
Oh, absolutely.
Sounds like a great pastime.
Whenever he tweets, it's like a delicious morsel in my mouth. It's
like a Pavlovian bell ring.
I do follow accounts specifically for that purpose. I know they're gonna tweet something that's gonna get me in there.
Yeah, that was something. Honestly, that was hard for me. I will just admit that. I wasn't ready at first to follow people and get notifications for their tweets that I didn't like. I just didn't see the productivity in that. But actually, I can say from our own experience with the podcast that going out on Twitter and being a little controversial and just jumping in people's mentions is pretty effective.
If you can hone your clapback game, you will master the social media.
Yeah.
So I verify your advice. That's all I'm saying. I want to ask about forced memes though, because I think that that's an easy trap for people to fall into if you're out there.
Oh yes.
Trying to get clout. It's really easy to think that you're onto something funny and keep trying to shove it down people's throats, and nobody actually give a shit. I think one of the best examples in recent memory, actually not super recent, but semi-recent memory, would have to be Hillary Clinton going on Between Two Ferns, which was the biggest attempt of her campaign in 2016 to be relatable, and it was an absolute bombshell. Just complete failure. Could not have made her look less like a human. So
that's so interesting that you use that example, because what I immediately thought of was the whole Warren meme team thing. I think you guys even talked about this on your podcast.
Yes.
Oh, God.
Talk about forced meme. That was a forced meme apparatus. Would that have worked?
We talked to Lau before the Warren meme team came up, because we were ironically making Warren meme, all of us, and they were hilarious. They were hilarious. The idea of a Warren meme. Go ahead, Lau.
Better than the ones that the Warren would have drawn up.
Our fake memes were funnier than the real Warren meme team memes, and I have no idea what happened to them.
They were disavowed as not an official thing. A consultant had come up with the idea or something like that, or a fan was the official story afterwards. But that would have been just great, because we were making such great ironic Warren memes beforehand. We could have easily co-opted that movement, which co-opting meme movements is a whole other problem for candidates, I think. But forced memes, I just don't think it's possible. It just won't catch. The Hillary thing, obviously, that more backfired than anything. But the Warren meme team was oh my gosh. Oh gosh. I don't think it works, and I don't think
how can you kind of make sure you avoid it though? Because I think it's a really easy.
Wait, before we get into that, because we do need to know when a meme is forced. Sarah, do you have access to the Ready Room? Can you step in there for a second? I want to show us an image.
Okie dokie, Ready Room. Got it.
This is
from
the
my
first
goodness.
page of the Warren meme team. I just wanted to share that. It's Elizabeth Warren. She's pumping her fist. There is a speech bubble. The speech bubble reads simply, yeet.
You know what's fascinating about some of these forced memes, though, is I wonder if they are received by boomers in a different way, because some of the boomer memes that are very sincere seem very forced. And I think that there's I don't know who makes these forced memes, if it is sort of boomer mentality behind them, but maybe does that sit with boomers at all? I have no idea. Obviously, yeet doesn't make any sense to them, but that format.
With this obvious them putting a traditional marketing person in charge of them, because they're like, well, it's just social media marketing is marketing. Skills will transfer.
Oh, you know what? You basically got there already. So the first thing I would say is there's a whole problem with the way people are even trying to approach meme culture. Firstly, by not understanding it as a culture. The idea of a marketer trying to make memes for a campaign is just kind of absurd, or it's contrary to meme culture. And these whole attempts to like build an apparatus, like I think I've seen a couple campaigns do this where they're going to like try and collate a bunch of meme templates and then empower their grassroots to make a bunch of memes with them. Even that is a little too forced. The whole point is to cultivate a meme culture around, like, I think the Orb Gang is
culture. It's not a diktat.
And it's spontaneous. And you kind of have to accept the reality that you can try and control the meme narrative, but you can't control the meme. Like, normal people have to make the memes. You have to let it arise spontaneously and do what you can to fuel that and shape it. But it has to be normal people.
We should talk about this in another episode, but there's definitely a real fundamental aspect of internet culture that's communitarian and really resists hierarchical sort of corporate or grabbing of it, just in how decentralized and slippery it all is.
Yeah, you have to accept that reality, I think, just going in there. You can't think like, I'm going to pay marketers to make memes. You have to think, how can I inspire a community to spontaneously create memes. And you shouldn't have to pay for it.
There's a lot of different facets. You got to get people make memes to like your candidate on a level that they appreciate.
Sarah, how old are you?
28.
You're roughly around Kennedy's age. Y'all are pretty similar. You have seen the internet's culture completely change from when you were a kid.
Oh yes.
Right.
God. I can only imagine.
You've lived through news groups. You've lived through PHPBB. You've lived through Slacker News. You've lived through Dig. You've lived through Reddit. You've seen the entire evolution. So would you say as a whole, the internet is more centralized and corporate now, or is it less centralized than corporate? And what impact does that have on how we think about promoting on social?
Definitely less centralized and less corporate. And by the way, I think that things will continue to rapidly change. And I think we're already seeing that with Gen Z. I don't know if there's any Gen Z on here, but Gen Z like treats the internet almost in a completely different way. And like the millennial way of like handling the internet is quickly becoming a little outdated, or we're becoming a little bit out of touch, and it's sort of escalating, and the internet culture is changing like right in front of us, and some millennials are like
constantly performing, the previous don't understand, you have to extremely online keep on with the change.
Exactly. And Gen Z has these very interesting internet behaviors of being anonymous, or they'll just like delete accounts and create new ones like it's nothing, whereas even millennials like sort of like cherish their legacy accounts and they want a blue check and they want like all these followers or whatever, and Gen Z is like, as a whole, doesn't even care about any of that stuff. They'd rather just have their data deleted and not have to worry about it. Like it's a total way of interacting with the internet.
I mean, just when you think about it, millennials bridge the gap in that they grew up in the fringes of the internet and saw it evolve. But like when I was like 5 and I logged on to .com on my parents' laptop, like it's always been around it's been a fixture in my life and in my media consumption habits.
And furthermore, for Gen Z, memes are that fixture as well. Like we watched meme culture kind of evolve out of sort of nothing in a way. Not really nothing, because I mean, there's all these famous examples now that like, yeah, memes have actually kind of been around to some extent sort of forever. But depending on what you want to categorize, especially, but like, yeah, I don't know, it's very strange to like think about that for me, for sure, because I saw the origins of these cultures, but like for a lot of people, now that are just like coming up to adulthood, that's all they know is the meme culture as it's like kind of existed in this fully formed state.
Yeah.
And they know they have the freedom to just like create a new account at any time, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I think even with forums and platforms, we see the same thing. 4chan has a problem. They start 8chan. Like they can always create a new platform. There's, they understand it in a little bit of a different way, or it's more of a fact of life.
Yeah, this shit changes on the internet sometimes really quickly.
Facebook becomes not cool. There's Instagram, there's TikTok. There's going to be something else next year,
Yeah. I mean, Facebook, like, I don't know anyone that has a Facebook. Or
what the hell is a Facebook anymore?
They use it very, very rare for a specific funk.
I feel like I get gray hairs every time someone says that to me because I'm such a typical millennial. I spend like most of my time on Facebook, and I know it's a dead platform, and I like hate it, but for some reason I still spend all my time there, and I don't know.
There is nothing that will make you feel old like having Leia as a co-host, because like I'll make a millennial reference and Leia will be like, people don't even like, if I were to say something about Fortnite, Leia would just be like, people don't even shut up.
I know this is our plight as millennials. It's just gonna get worse from here.
Yeah, except you Zoomers dunk on all of us for being old, but all of you listen to My Chemical Romance. What's up with that?
Adam.
Hey, it does slap. It does. You can things that are old slap. Dad counts, and I'm fucking into it.
I told you.
Oh God.
I told you. Just feel your skin wrinkling when Leia talks. Really terrible.
All right.
Yeah.
Sarah, let's try to get in one more serious question.
Yeah.
People say that social media followers don't equal votes, and like I complain a lot about these like wonky political servers that I'm in here on Discord, where people will say all the time, well, that person's really just running on Twitter about progressive candidates, things like that, you know? But like the data seems clear that social media following has a correlation with political victory since at least 2008. So
that's absolutely true.
Yeah. So what do you think about like, where's the dividing line in terms of like, obviously you can't run your entire platform on social media and do nothing else. Or maybe you can.
I would even debate. Okay, I would debate that.
Go for it. I want to hear this. This is what I'm here for.
Oh, yeah.
Can I win just off Twitter? What's happening?
Can I post my way into the office?
I mean, Kennedy, you're 100% right. First off, it cracks me up when people try and say like, oh, social media engagement doesn't equal votes. And I'm like, actually, for the last 4 elections, like it's factually true that it does.
Like voters are on social.
Yeah, whatever candidate posted the most on social media and got the most engagement won their election, like 100% of the time. Like, it's not even just a theory, it's a fact, like as much of a fact as you can possibly get. So it absolutely cracks me up when people say stuff like that, like social media likes don't equal votes. It's just, you have to have a different perspective and think like, okay, well, just because 10,000 people tuned into your live stream on Facebook doesn't mean 10,000 people are going to vote for you. But the data doesn't lie on that one. Like the verdict's in, honestly. Mm-hmm. I forgot the second part of your question. I get so carried away about that part because everyone says it.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember exactly what the fuck I said.
I don't. It's
whether you can win just on Twitter.
Yes, you win just on Twitter.
Right.
I would weight Twitter above Facebook or Instagram on like, could you pick one platform and just win an election? Like Twitter would be the one I would pick. Like, yeah, that's most plausible. Facebook would be a second one, mostly because the age demographic on there is proven to vote. But Twitter is definitely the most powerful. I would honestly debate like more and more people cancel cable. And when you look at it's interesting to me in this election to study the television ads and the ad spend, because you contrast like how much are candidates spending on the television ads and print ads versus the digital ads. And then how does that affect their polling? First of all, we all know that the polling is bullshit. Like, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on your podcast.
No, it's fine.
But, you know, adult podcast, you can say literally anything.
This is right. It's not safe for once. So
safe.
We know polling is completely detached from reality because till the very end, they told us Trump had no chance of winning. But
and it's all landline contact. And,
then the TV ad spend correlates directly to the increase in polling. So if you spend on TV, you're going to get more in the polls. But the polls aren't even indicative of reality. So
yeah, I mean, of course,
in my opinion, just throw that out the window.
If I can digress, like, of course, ad spends increase polling. Polling is on land. Who the fuck is going to answer landlines? It's the same people that watch TV ads.
Yeah, and even some of them like do the cell phones. They'll call your cell phone these days. But who picks up an unknown number? I mean, honestly, unless you're a boomer or something like that. No, even millennials don't pick up phones for unknown numbers.
I mean, I've seen breakdowns of polls where if you take the non-landline voters, Sanders a hell of a lot more than he does.
I just also have to say, I watched the Scream TV show recently, and one of the only huge things that bothered me was that they were all answering these unknown calls. Like, who does that?
Yeah. So if the polls have no real bearing on the TV ad spend has no real bearing on reality, you can kind of just like toss all that stuff out.
Yeah.
But what we do have concrete data for in this age is that the more social media engagements you get, the more likely your chances of winning your election. So, and that's really the strongest metric that we have in today's political reckoning. So it kind of boggles my mind that people still think that you have to have TV ads to be relevant. You have to have TV ads maybe for some people to take you seriously or something like that, or for the media to say this or that about you. But last election, it didn't matter what the media said or what the polls said or anything like that. So I would completely make the case that you can win an election just on social media. And if you're on a budget, it might be more pertinent for you to really focus on social media and focus on waging like a breakthrough digital campaign like Trump did. And I'll remind everyone, the media didn't even want to cover Trump in the beginning of his election in 2015.
Correct.
And he brute forced it because he just started live casting all of his speeches on his own social media pages. And people tuned in, and then the media had to cover him.
He made himself a thing instead of relying for the media.
And he forced his way in there. He just brute forced it using social media. Like, you become the most important media channel, and his social media to this day, more people pay attention to that than traditional news outlets. So I would say that social media is probably this. I mean, I'm not just saying this because it's my job, but it's the most important thing in politics today. And, if you're on a budget, put all your money in that, because I think you literally can win an election just on Twitter.
Yeah.
Are there any candidates that are running for any office right now that you would say they have
I've been following a handful of congressional candidates, actually. I don't know if you wanted to specify presidential or congressional.
I mean,
Congressional's great.
Name names.
Yeah,
Let's go.
there's actually a lot, and this might be like focus bubble bias, but lots of progressive candidates. I've got like a list of like 20 that I follow on like a special list on Twitter. And like my favorite right now is Morgan Harper in Ohio, District 3 out of Columbus. She's on every platform, and it's not just her Twitter. Her Instagram is tight as hell. She's doing the Facebook thing the way she should. I think she should do like more live stream type stuff, because I think that's the way to really force it. But I think on a congressional level, it's not as crucial as the presidential level. But she's got her game tight, and her fundraising numbers set records, like all-time records. So I think the proof is really in the pudding on that one too. She raised like over $300,000 in her first quarter. And she did like national fundraising on social media, like digital. And she did like other things too, but her social media was tight from the beginning, and she focused on it.
What specifically did she do that you think other people can learn from?
I think she came out the gate with all her ducks in a row on social. And I think, like, I've seen some campaigns, like they'll have a good Twitter, but they haven't given any love to their Facebook, or they'll even have a link on their website of like their Twitter, their Facebook, and their Instagram, and their Instagram will straight up be a dead link, or their Twitter will just be a dead link. And it's like, I feel like you have to have all your platforms in a row, because people go and look for that. And also when like these social algorithms and everything, like the world of data is like, if you like something on Facebook, or you like something on Amazon, you'll see an ad for it on Facebook, or you like something on Twitter, you'll start seeing it on another platform. And there's a whole power to that too, where you don't really want to, if you're going to pick a platform and like have your username on it, you might as well make it look nice. So I think that's one thing that she did straight up. And she also did national targeting. She took advantage of the zeitgeist, which is 2020. Everyone cares about elections in this year. And I think it's just going to pay off even more for her as we go into 2020, honestly.
So for someone who is a candidate, or maybe someone that's running like a small podcast, syndication can be very tough. And for people that don't know, that's just the art of getting on all of the platforms, because there's Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. Those are probably the big ones. What strategy should people use in order to make sure that they have content that can fit on all the platforms, and they can fit posting on all those platforms?
I think, it's really crucial to be on all the platforms that you pick. Like, the more platforms, the better. But like, if you just are like not hot on Snapchat, you can just cancel that one out or something like that. But in general, the more platforms, the better. And this is another reason I love Gary Vee, is he talks about like, you just need to put a lot of this content. And he actually gives away these strategies where you can turn like one podcast into like 12 pieces of content and post them on like 6 different platforms. And all you did was record one podcast and maybe make one type of image, but you've created like a dozen pieces of content to go across platforms. And you can, if you observe his social media, sort of like a crash course in that, he does one talk, cuts it up into little clips, puts a little picture over it. Now it's an Instagram clip or an IGTV thing or a Twitter clip or whatever, or takes a quote out of a podcast and puts it as a Twitter status. Things like that, where it's like, you don't have to be creating a bazillion pieces of content, but you can take whatever content you're putting out and just realize that there's different ways to put it on each platform. And ultimately, the more platforms and the more content you put out, the more reach and the more following you're going to get. But the other key point is to focus on where the advantages actually are. Like TikTok, you get like insane reach for free because it's where the underpriced attention is. That's what Gary Vee calls it, underpriced attention. It's like how Amazon got big. They purchased Google ads when it was cheap. People got big on Facebook by purchasing Facebook ads when it was cheap. And you get all this organic reach on like LinkedIn and TikTok and stuff like that. So if you are like keen to that, you can get even more mileage out of just posting your content on those platforms. Like you don't even have to pay for ads on TikTok. You can get 1 million followers right now. People literally do get 1 million followers in like a week on TikTok.
It happens. Well,
it's quite common right now.
To my knowledge, Sarah, you are not on TikTok.
So I have a TikTok. I haven't posted anything, but I study the platform relentlessly. I haven't I'm waiting to post something.
That's where I get that. I don't know about tech. That's not my ball. That's where I'm getting. And I hate
that's where the audience is. It's when people don't know it's their ball game yet, and it's new.
If you get in there, yeah.
I just might.
Listen,
I could talk for hours on TikTok. I think it's the most brilliant social media platform. And I'm like American supremacists who are like, oh my God, it's so terrible that the Chinese are taking over. Like they should be shaking about TikTok because I look at TikTok and I'm like, I don't know if it's possible for an American company to innovate beyond TikTok, just with the way our capital structure works and how we fund our companies and acquire our talent. It's scary to me because I'm like, they did something so huge with TikTok. There's a reason it's the fastest growing platform. And I seriously doubt an American company can innovate beyond that, which scares me. I hope I'm wrong, but TikTok is really something else. I want to get in there, but I just haven't made my first TikTok yet.
That's a wild assessment. I think that's a good place to leave this episode too. We've recorded about an hour and this was just a wonderful conversation. It's always fun for us, and I actually think for a lot of our listeners too, because a lot of our listeners are activists. Some of them are people running for office, things like that, to talk about this kind of stuff. And it's always good, in my opinion, to get businessy topics out in the open and not obscure them from everyone. So anyway. But I just want to say again, this was a great conversation. Sarah Marilyn, thank you so much. How can people reach you on the internet?
Facebook, I'm always on there. Twitter is another way to find me. I have an email, sarahmarylandsocial@gmail.com. I love responding to emails. DM, tweet at me, send me an email. I love it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we'll be putting all of those links in the show notes, as always. Sarah Marilyn, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. It was a blast.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to have you on again because this was a lot of fun, and I feel like we could probably record 20 hours of content with you. So
oh my God, I feel like we could, yeah.
And you definitely feel free to come back whenever you feel like it. Just drop us a line because you, like we said when we started, you've kind of been with the show in spirit from the jump. Kind of like that distant aunt or something like that. All the time.
Yeah. Well, I love what you guys are doing. I really feel, all the social media stuff, it just kind of gets pigeonholed into brands and stuff like that. But we're in a new age with social media and activism where, the new celebrities are just normal people that we're calling influencers. And it's really become the people can just define the voices and the trends of today. And so all these sort of social media and marketing stuff is it really belongs to the people. And I think everything you guys do sort of is part of that zeitgeist where we're waking up to that.
Love it.
Well,
all right. So everybody listening, thank you.
Everybody who's out there
It's
listening.
been fantastic.
Everybody's out there listening. Thank you so much. And if you enjoy the show, don't forget to follow us on Twitter, NSF Wonks, if you're not there already. And also don't forget to check out our Patreon, patreon.com/notsafe. If you love our content, we have more content that you can have very cheaply, and it supports the show, and we appreciate it so much. So check it out. Thank you. And with that, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
See ya.